We may have been knocked down, but we definitely aren't knocked out. And now it seems as though we may be ready to reclaim our place as the powerhouse economy of the Caribbean. From Joaquin to Dorian to COVID to multiple downgrades, we've seen it all. Hello and welcome to On the Record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Now that we've begun to see the relaxing of the COVID-19 safety protocols, tourists are beginning to feel more and more comfortable about visiting the Bahamas, and that could mean a reawakening of our economy. With an anticipated $1.3 billion deficit, our economy may finally be coming off of life support. Tonight on The Record, we discuss the rebounding economy with experts in finance and economics, commerce, as well as hospitality and tourism sectors. Stay tuned, our discussion begins on the other side of this break. Every new season of On the Record, we push the limits, venture into unknown territory, take our cameras into places unseen before. We share the stories and experiences that affect us all. And now it's time for Season 5. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. on RTV, cable channel 212, and streaming live on Facebook. And welcome back to On the Record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer, and tonight we are discussing the rebounding economy. Do we have what it takes to return to our pre-COVID standing? On June 2nd, the Prime Minister began the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget debate with a reminder of the unprecedented effects of Monster Storm Dorian and the historic COVID-19 pandemic. Severely, he says he blamed, I should say, these events on disrupting the positive fiscal and economic direction of our economy. He also went on the record saying that the Bahamas was on track to achieve the largest deficit reduction we have seen in over 20 years and on the way to a balanced budget prior to the devastating, catastrophic events that have occurred in the past few years. My guest tonight is no stranger to the world of finance, economics, and commerce, and definitely no stranger to us here on the record. He's the founder and principal of Sumner Strategies Partners, Mr. Edison Sumner. Edison, welcome again to On the Record.
Thank you very much, Jerome. It's always a pleasure being with you.
We have, you and I have had numerous discussions in this setting about where we have been headed. I remember right after Dorian, we had an in-depth discussion. During the pandemic, we've talked about, the possible effects of these events on the economy and our economic future. The Prime Minister, as I would have alluded to, put a lot of issues at the feet of these events in terms of our stagnated growth or our, what we find the situation we find ourselves in. This budget has gotten a lot of feedback, I think, on both sides. So let's begin by sort of dissecting the budget if we can. What would you say are some of the things that were on the positive side, and what would you say are some of the negatives that just from a general assessment of the budget that was laid out in Parliament?
Yeah. So, yes, thanks again. I think that we certainly have to take into consideration the two very catastrophic events that have struck the Bahamas over the last couple of years. And that certainly has had what I call a very debilitating impact on the economy. But if you were to look at the budget, and if I were to raise some of the highlights of the budget, I think are beneficial to us would be certainly the attention that the government is now paying to small business development in the country, where they have made an allocation over the next 5 years of some $250 million towards small and medium-sized business development in the country. That is quite significant. I don't think we can underplay that in any way because, as we know, in any society, the small and medium enterprises is a sector of the economy that drives the daily revenue, the daily churn in the economy. And it's very important for us to pay very close attention to the segment or the sector and segment of the economy. So to me, one of the highlights or one of the greatest attributes of this budget would be the attention that's being paid to small and medium-sized development in the country. Not only in the funding of it, but looking at providing mentorship opportunities, equity investments, access to funding through grants and debt and the rest of it. So that to me, if I would highlight a single event, that would be the most important single event to me. However, on the cons side of this balance sheet, right, the concern has to be with not spending necessarily, but the level of spending that we are going to incur. The challenge will, of course, have to be with the level of debt that we have racked up over the years, especially coming out of the COVID situation and exacerbated by Dorian. And not that the debt is something that is bad necessarily, but it is really going to be more about how we put measures in place to manage the debt that we have, to manage the level of spending that we are going to incur, to be sure that we are not spending ourselves out of the future. So I'm certainly concerned about that, and also concerned over the fact that we have such a high debt service ratio, where we're spending in excess of $500 million a year just to service this debt. And that is why I said that some debt is not bad, some borrowing is not bad. In fact, spending and borrowing by any government is inevitable. We cannot get around it. It doesn't matter how you try. It doesn't matter the best governments that you have, the best budgets that we would have had in the past. Every government is going to borrow money. Every government is going to spend money.
If I can, I want to drill down on a couple of things. Let's go with the pro side first. Why is the attention to the small business development important? And I want to take it from the layman's perspective. I work for a private company, people who work, in the civil service, other people who are not involved in business. I hear that comment and I go, well, why is that good? I'm not involved in business. That's not going to help me in any way. So why would you say that's important for the economy? And how does that translate into into a positive for other people who aren't involved in business?
Well, that's the thing. You don't have to be involved in business directly for this to impact you, right? The fact is that these small and medium enterprises are the ones who are hiring these people, right? When you have those massive layoffs taking place at some of the major employers in the country, it is, in a large measure, it is these smaller enterprises who are taking those people on, hiring 2, 3, 5 people or so at a time. That has a significant benefit. It has a significant impact on the level of employment and employability in the country. When you look at these small companies, they're the ones who are spending money in the economy on a daily basis, right? These are the guys who are out there hiring people, offering short-term contracts. They are picking up temporary workers. They are filling the gap for these other larger companies and for the government. So you don't have to be a business person for this to impact you. What you have to be is someone who is actually able and available to work. You possess the relevant skill sets so that these smaller companies who are themselves businesses, they might be entrepreneurs, they might be small business owners, but these are the ones who are hiring these people. And a lot of times you find that these SMEs are hiring people who may not possess the requisite skill sets to work for some of the larger companies. So they are certainly filling a gap there when it comes to the whole idea of skills development and talent management within the private sector.
So let's tackle now the con side. Your concern is with the level of spending, and we've heard it over and over. Government spending is up, and it doesn't seem as if we're going to taper off. Is there a way around that? I mean, we find ourselves at a very almost desperate situation. Is there a way around government borrowing and spending?
There isn't. Here's the thing. Every government is going to borrow money. Every government is going to spend money. The spending is necessary. It's an imperative, because if the government stops spending money, the economy is going to freeze. The economy is going to collapse. It is necessary for the government to continue with spending, whether it's in capital works, capital projects, whether it's spending money on education, healthcare, social services, employing the however many certain people that they engage in the civil service, paying for meals, etc. So it is necessary for the government to spend. We can never get away from that. The challenge will be, however, how much does the government spend? Can it control its spending and spending money in areas where it will have a direct impact on the welfare of the citizenry? It will have a direct impact on improving the lifestyle of people in this country, whether it's fixing infrastructure, dealing with healthcare matters, and education. Now, on the borrowing side of that equation, it is also necessary for the government to borrow money from time to time. So there are only one of a few ways that the government gets to raise capital or gets to raise money to fund its programs, to fund its fiscal policies, if you will. And one of them is through borrowing. So you can borrow money. All of us are able to borrow money. That's like me having the ability to build a large house. So the challenge is not in getting the money to build a house. The challenge is going to be, can I maintain this house over the next 20 years? Can I pay the mortgage on the house every month? Can I paint my house when it's needed, fix my roof when it's needed? That's where the challenge is, right? So all of us can borrow money. Not all of us can borrow the same level of money, but we're all eligible to something. But it's going to be in how we maintain the money that we've borrowed and how we manage the debt that we are getting into.
So help us now to, I guess, equip us, I should say, to be able to recognize some indicators. Indicators that we are headed in the right direction, or indicators that we are headed in the wrong direction. Just as laypersons, I'm looking at this, and how do I begin to gauge now, as an ordinary Bahamian, if the economy is headed in the right or wrong direction? What are the indicators I'm looking out for almost on a daily basis?
Well, the first indicator is one that works in either direction, whether the economy is doing well or if it is being challenged, and that is level of employment. If there are more people being employed, both in the public and private sector, that's an indication that the economy is doing well, that we are improving on our economic outlook, we're improving on our economic activities. If you are seeing continued and sustained layoffs or furloughs or redundancies or terminations, that means that the economy is not doing so well, because those companies or those enterprises do not have the ability to keep people employed. And that ability means they're not generating the revenue and they're not able to manage properly their expenses. So they're going to trim the fat wherever they can to maintain the level of revenue and operation that they're able to. And unfortunately, in all of those cases, the human resources is usually the first casualty. So the other indication that we're doing well, we are a tourist-based economy. That's the major driver of our financial income. So if you see that the tourist markets are reopening, that the hotels are opening up again, that the airlines are now bringing in more airlift on a daily basis, then that's a positive sign that the economy is rebounding, because that is now bringing in foreign currency to the country. It's again employing people in that sector, so they're getting back to work. Another major indicator that the economy is doing well and trending in the right direction is if we see an increase in the level of construction activities, right? Homes being built, enterprises being built, commercial buildings being built, infrastructure being put in place, that is a great indicator that there is confidence in the economy and that we are trending in the right direction.
So, Edison, I know we're running out of time. So I always want to try and equip people with knowledge. It's no secret we are entering the election season. And on both sides, there's a lot of rhetoric. So you've got government on one side says, things are better than you would have thought. We're coming out of this crisis, and the opposition screaming, oh, hell no, things, we're headed for disaster. How do we begin to sift through all of this, and where do people go to get the facts? Because a lot of times we are given so much information between social media and, everybody has a press conference every day to talk about everything. But where do people go to be able to get the facts and get a real picture on the economy?
Well, the first thing I think we need to do, Jerome, is that we need to take the politics out of the economy.
Good luck with that. Good luck with that. But that aside, where do we find it?
It's a mammoth task, right? And it probably will never happen. But
no.
the problem with that is that when you engage politics in the discussion of the economy, you will always get a political answer.
Sure.
You will never get the real answer because the government is going to tout what they think would be their successes. The opposition is going to blast it and say it doesn't make any sense. And here's what we think ought to happen, but this always comes with a political twist. So my thing is you've got to get to the sources of information where they are not necessarily dependent on government. These are the independent type thinkers, like the central bank, for example, right? Ask the central bank, what is the true condition of the economy? What's happening with our foreign currency reserves? Are we still doing well? Are we still holding on to our healthy reserves? We need to talk to those kinds of agencies who are not necessarily taking instructions from the government or from any political directorate. That is where I think you're going to get some of the real answers. And then you have to talk to some of the private, independent-minded institutions or people like the Chamber of Commerce and others who are supposed to give you a very neutral position, a real situation, and not pander to any kind of political pressure to put out statements that are supporting a political view, but looking entirely at the economic situation in the country. And then you have to look at other institutions like the university, for example. They've got a fantastic research center there, and who should be able to come up with independent analyses of the economy, of the society, of environment, and again, not pander to any political views, because as long as we keep politics in the discussion on the economy, I'm talking about the real economy now, then you will always get, in my view, what is considered a political spin. And that is obviously the case when you listen to the current budget debate. The government puts a position out that they're doing well with certain things, and a lot of it is quite correct. And then you have the opposition who comes behind and slams it and says that you're not doing a very good job. So we need to be able to do this very independent mind.
Let's hope and pray we get to that point at one point before all of us are gone off of this earth. I don't see it happening. But anyway, before we go, we're just about out of time for your segment. So we've talked about tourism and small business, but what other industries are we looking at that have been badly affected by this pandemic, that we probably have not mentioned, that may be struggling, that we may not be giving a lot of attention to, in the overall view of things? What other industries and indices are out there that we need to be taking a look at to give us some indication of how bad or how better, or, are we on the road to recovery, or are we really headed in the wrong direction? What other things we need to be looking at?
From indices, you've got to look at the consumer price index, right? And the retail market, that is going to be a very strong indicator, because when there is no money to spend, retail suffers tremendously because people are either not spending or they're not spending as much, right? They are reducing their grocery list. They are reducing their spend on non-essential or luxury items. And that is where you're going to feel the pinch most of all, especially when they consider that when I buy these items from these retailers, I'm still having to pay my 12% value-added tax on top of it. So if you want to look at it and the direct impact to the consumer, it has to be looking at what's happening with the consumer price index, what's happening in the retail space, and that is going to be and has been the most directly impacted from both Dorian and from the COVID-19 situation. And we saw that even with the government when they were offering and still offering employment replacement benefits, food vouchers and the rest of it. and that money was a substitute for income. So now you're getting probably $100, $150 a week or so to finance your living and lifestyle, which is down from someone who's earning $500, $600 a week.
Considerably
So now
down.
that's 1/5 or 1/4 of what you would have spent before in the retail space. So retail would certainly be the most directly impacted by these.
And very quickly, any other industries very quickly, or industries we need to be paying attention to?
Again, it's the construction industry.
Okay.
That's just, we have to be paying attention. But I must say that overwhelmingly it has to be in the retail space.
Edison Sumner, thank you so very much for coming on. You always bring great insight, so thank you very much. We appreciate it. We'll certainly be checking with you from time to time. And you and I, we've got to put it high on the prayer list, remove politics from the economy. We pray about that every day.
I'm going to start a fasting chain on that one.
There you go. All right. You have my buy-in. Thank you very much. When we return, we're going to turn our focus to the one industry that contributes to our economy. We would have mentioned it already, tourism. Don't go anywhere. We're going to have more right after this. Every new season of On the Record, we push the limits, venture into unknown territory, take our cameras into places unseen before. We share the stories and experiences that affect us all. And now it's time for Season 5. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. on RTV, cable channel 212, and streaming live on Facebook. And welcome back. You're watching On the Record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Tonight we're discussing the rebounding economy, and are we finally off of life support? Well, for decades, the Bahamas has benefited from tourism, and it's played a major role in our economy. Even after the pandemic, that continues. Tonight, as we take a deeper look into where our tourism levels and flight levels are currently, I am joined by officials from the Nassau Airport Development Company. Welcome, Vice President of Marketing and Commercial Development, Jan Knowles, as well as the Director of Operations, Jonathan Hanna. Welcome to On the Record.
Thank you.
I first have I'm going to start out by taking a little liberty here. I've been through the airport several times, going and coming back in, and it has gone very, very well. My experience through COVID, even now as we start to move past all of this, has been very well. You all have been doing a great job. You are to be commended. So I just want to start out by saying that I think many times we spend a lot of time criticizing and we don't reward and recognize when necessary. So I just wanted to start out with that and congratulate you for a job well done. Now, let's dive right in and talk about where we are in terms of flight levels. A year ago, everything shut down. There was nothing happening. I mean, the skies were quiet. We have now reopened. Where are we in terms of our flight levels prior to COVID? Are we almost back to that point, halfway back? If you could quantify, give us a picture of where we are.
I think by this summer, Jerome, we will be about 50% back to where we were in 2019. We have been seeing incremental and month-over-month increases in flight capacity into Nassau. For instance, the American Airlines, they just announced a new flight into Austin, Texas. We have the return of British Airways. Certainly, Southwest Airlines, who had been missing, they have now announced their return with flights to Baltimore and Fort Lauderdale. And in the midst of all of this, we have Frontier Airlines, a brand new airline, coming to the Bahamas. They will have their inaugural flight on June the 24th. So certainly flight capacity is building. And throughout the pandemic, there was always, flight airlines put in very robust schedules, and, they had to pull back those schedules from time to time based on the demand. But there's always a demand for Nassau, and that's a good thing. and always the desire of the airlines to come to Nassau.
My experience in traveling back and forth, both domestic and internationally, I'm always pleased with the amount of tourists I see coming in because that means there's money. But I'm also, I think, sometimes surprised at the amount of Bahamians that are traveling back and forth. Is there any way for you to tell us, or do you have an idea of the ratio of Bahamians to tourists that are traveling?
Certainly right now, I think we're seeing a lot more tourists when compared to Bahamian travelers. And that's because we're seeing the vaccination rollout in the United States has gone really, really well. There's been a lot of pent-up demand, I guess, after, the rough year that 2020 was in terms of the lockdowns and the inability to travel. And so people are certainly flocking here. The Bahamas, thank God for its geography to the United States, which is our number one source market. We are pretty much within a 2 to 2.5 hour flight from the eastern seaboard of the United States. And so they are coming here in droves, and we're happy to welcome them back. But we are seeing Bahamians start to travel as well, as you mentioned. We certainly expect that as the summer goes on, people, schools are about to close or have closed already. And so we expect that Bahamians will be returning to the skies in due order or in due course.
So I want to talk about the impact of COVID-19. As you would have mentioned, as people become vaccinated, some of the protocols are being relaxed. Some things are beginning to happen. Now, I do know that airline travel and travel within itself, the protocols remain in place. But, as people become more as the vaccines or the vaccination process continues and more people become vaccinated, how are you managing all of that? Because there is a tendency, once you're vaccinated, and I can speak from experience, you get this almost sense of you begin to relax. You're not as tense anymore. You tend to take your mask off. You tend to do some things because you feel a little safer. But are you having to deal with that now with people probably not wanting to follow as many protocols? And then I also want to talk about the expense of all of this because going to the airport, you see the sanitization, you see all the things that are happening. Just the signage alone must be an incredible cost. So let's talk about how do we keep the protocols up for now, and then also the cost that you've had to bear as a result of all of this.
Well, Jerome,
sure.
For the most part, people have been. Sorry, Jonathan. For the most part, people have been very compliant. I think from the beginning of the pandemic, once we reopened, we didn't have any significant problems with compliance. People wore their masks. We have signage everywhere. The social distancing was adhered to. And so it has not been that significant an issue. As people become more and more vaccinated, I think the biggest concern that we have is people arriving at the airport and not understanding that if you are traveling to the US, you still need to have a COVID-19 test. And that test is required whether you are vaccinated or not.
Yes.
And I think that's been a challenge because, of course, coming into Nassau, you don't have to take a COVID test if you're fully vaccinated. So those are the kinds of things that we like to make sure that we communicate and continuously communicate about so that persons are ready and they come into the airport. We do a lot of communications campaigns just so that people can understand what to expect when they come. And of course, Jerome, it costs money.
I was about to say, let's talk about just the economic side of it. Like I said, the signage alone amazes me and what you all have had to spend. So let's talk about the residual cost of all of this.
All I could tell you, Jerome, a lot. A significant amount of dollars were spent to prepare this airport for COVID.
You said a lot.
Yes.
And listen, Jonathan can intimately tell you, and Jonathan, as director of operations, he can certainly speak to the extent that we've gone to, so much so that we've won awards. We were one of the first airports to actually get a COVID-19 health accreditation because of the extent to where we went in terms of cleaning, sanitation, and preparation. And, thanks to Jonathan, that's a key part of what I think has cause people to have that confidence in us.
So, Jonathan, let's talk about, first of all, congratulations on the award. I think we don't celebrate, our achievements enough in this country. And I say it all the time. We complain so much that we overshadow the great things. So congratulations to Nad and to you for standing out, with the rest of the world.
Thank you. Yeah, it was certainly a massive undertaking. At first, I'd be remiss if I don't say thank you to all of the great airport partners that we work with on a daily basis. People normally don't get a behind the scenes look at what goes into running an airport. When the pandemic first started, we immediately got our executive team and started liaising with all of our government partners, Bahamas Immigration, Customs, through security and everyone else, just to make sure that everybody was on the same page. A lot of information was coming out at that time, and it was changing almost on an hourly, not even a daily basis, but on an hourly basis, it seemed. But what we did do is we developed a document that we used internally to discuss how we would keep everybody safe, and not just the traveling public, but the airport community as well, because they play such an integral role ensuring that we get people to their loved ones or wherever they may be going. And so we went on an ambitious campaign from installing plexiglass barriers at all of our counters, gates, social distance markers, increased cleaning and sanitization, limiting the terminals to essential airport workers and ticketed passengers only. It was really a Herculean effort by all airport partners, and I can't stress that enough. We are certainly a team, and so by no means can we just take the credit. It's an airport-wide trophy, if you will, or accreditation, and so we continue to work with them on a day-to-day basis just to make sure that we can do what we do as best as we can do it.
And congratulations for you and your staff again on that. I can't reiterate that enough.
Thank you.
We are very proud of the work that you are doing there. Notice you didn't tell me how much it cost, but that's okay. I know it was a lot.
All I can tell you,
a lot. All right, so let's talk. We have some changing dynamics with our tourism product. We would have seen last week the first cruise ship make Nassau a port, for their departure, and the people that would have come in and they had to be tested. So I want to talk about sort of the changing dynamics. If people are coming now to Nassau or coming to the Bahamas to pick up cruises, that's going to change some things. Have you thought about how that's going to impact your operations at the airport? And what does that mean for us, as a destination?
Jerome?
Yep, certainly.
That's all we think about.
Jonathan.
Go ahead, Jonathan. I think Jonathan should definitely take this one.
Since the announcement was made about 2 months ago, or maybe a little bit more, that's been our number one focus. Again, started getting with all of our airport partners to discuss how it would impact us. So with Royal Caribbean starting last week, Saturday, we welcomed in about 1,000 passengers for the inaugural sailing from the cruise port here. Once Crystal gets started on July 3rd, they represent another possibly 700 to 900 passengers. So that's already, 2,000 passengers, in addition to what, we would have land-based here going to the hotels, either Bahama, Atlantis, etc., who also have been saying that they've been seeing increased booking rates and they're seeing, what looks to be a great summer. So we've had to start planning, and that involves, getting with all of our partners to figure out, where the crunch points will be. Working on landside operations plans. Again, we're still in a pandemic, so how do we safely move these persons through? It has been, again, a massive undertaking, but the first set of passengers coming in we had a great weekend, and we anticipate that it'll continue to be a great summer.
Fantastic. Government has purchased the Grand Bahama Airport and have expressed their intention to make it a state-of-the-art airport, just like LPIA, and that has had a significant role in that. Will you all have any input or any involvement with the new Grand Bahama Airport?
Not directly. We may, from time to time, be called upon to give advice, but our focus is the Nassau Airport and all of the activities here, the expansionary activities that have now stopped since the pandemic. and just basically operating the airport given this new environment that we're in. Just wanted to say something about the cruise passengers again. This weekend will be the true test because we will now have arriving cruise passengers, departing cruise passengers mixed along with our land-based passengers. So this will be an interesting weekend for us, and we believe that we're ready. The operations team has done a significant amount of work in that regard, and so we'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's going to be a real showdown this weekend. You've got people coming and going.
Listen, and we are so ready. Mm-hmm. If you come out to the airport, we've created an outdoor lounge area.
Wow.
You should see we have these massive tents because we always had these beautiful gardens.
Yes.
And so now we're using those gardens. People who are coming through after you check in, if we need to hold you for just a little while before sending you through to be security screened and to do U.S. Customs, we have this beautiful garden area that we've set up. It has vendors. It has seating, it's comfortable. And so we've thought of everything that we possibly could to make sure that we give everyone coming to the Bahamas the best
selfish me has to ask this. If I'm not traveling, can I still come to the gardens?
It's not for passengers.
Only for, unfortunately not.
Okay, no problem, fair enough. I need to find somewhere to go then. All right, so you would have mentioned, brings me to my next point. You would have mentioned, this is a holding area, possibly before you go through U.S. Customs border and protection. Now, this I know has been a bit of an area of contention. Folks have said to me, they've met long lines, and there's been a lot of delays with U.S. Customs and border protection at the airport. What's happening? They don't seem to have a lot of people there. I've seen a handful as opposed to, all of the stations being open. What's happening, and when do you have any indication when we will get, we will see a return to normalcy in terms of the numbers of U.S. Customs and Immigration who are stationed at the airport?
Well, I think at this point, we're working very closely with them to make sure that passengers are able to be comfortable, to be screened as efficiently as possible, given their own mandate. And so I think that you will see improvements in that regard. We've already started to see it. And like I said, this weekend will be the true test, and we're looking for good results, and we think we'll get that.
Okay, you mentioned some. And obviously this is the question. I'm just going to say that that's a question that they have to answer more than anything else. I know that you all work with them, so I don't want to put you in a weird position with them.
No, not at all.
Hopefully they will answer at some point to say, when we expect more. But okay, finally, it's summertime. You would have indicated people are going to be traveling a lot more as more people get vaccinated. People feel more comfortably. Tips for travelers. People who are traveling this summer, what do you say to them as they're preparing now to travel and and traverse the airport? What do you say to them? Any tips to make the experience a little better?
Sure, we got quite a bit. The first one being to ensure that passengers get to the airport at least 3 to 3.5 hours ahead of their flight. Prior to this summer when things were a bit quieter, I think people, because the airport was a little bit slower, people got a little comfortable and showed up to the airport, an hour and a half or 2 hours before their flight. But everybody from the TSA in the United States, everybody's seeing this return to travel. And so we just want to make sure everybody has enough time to go through the various airport processes. Again, they have to go through the process to ensure everybody remains safe and secure. And so we just want to ensure that everyone gets to the airport in enough time to go through all of the various requirements needed to get on the aircraft. The second item that we would recommend would be, even though you may be vaccinated, it is still a requirement by the CDC and the U.S. government that you provide a negative RT-PCR or antigen test before going to the United States. Again, as we would have talked about earlier, we've started to see, that's been somewhat of a challenge with persons who are fully vaccinated not getting or providing that negative test. And so we just want to ensure that passengers and prospective travelers are aware of that. For domestic travel, if you are going to a family island, you will need it leaving from Nassau to have a negative PCR test going to whichever family island, depending on which family island you're coming back from. It may not be needed depending on what the status is on that particular island. So we would recommend just doing a bit of research before you book your ticket. If you have any questions, feel free to come to our website, which is nassauLPIA.com. Obviously, continuing just tips and trips to get through security as well. When you're going through security, make sure you remove your belt. Any items that are loose, change, keys, place them in your carry-on before going through security. That way you don't have to worry about fumbling around with a bin. It's just a little bit easier in that regard as well.
There's one more too. There's one important thing as you start to, even as you're planning your vacation, I think one of the important things to think about is what day to travel on. If you could avoid travel on Saturday and Sunday, that would be, if you can, avoid it. I would recommend avoiding it.
Yes.
The best day for travel in the travel industry, as Jonathan can attest, and everyone who works in this industry can attest, is a Tuesday.
I hope my boss is listening, so when I'm missing on a Tuesday, he knows where I am.
Tuesday or Wednesday. Those are your days.
Thank you very much. Thanks for giving us some great information and great insight. Continue to do the great work that you're doing at NAD. We really appreciate it. Airport has come such a long way. Next time I bring you on, I want to talk about the other. I know that you stopped the next phase of the development, but we're out of time. We'll talk about that next time. Looking forward to that and see what's coming. So thank you very much. We really appreciate you. For our audience, don't go away. When we come back, we're going to get in touch with some business owners on the Family Islands, get an idea of how their local economies are doing. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this. Every new season of On the Record, we push the limits, venture into unknown territory, take our cameras into places unseen before. We share the stories and experiences that affect us all. And now it's time for Season 5. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. on RTV, cable channel 212, and streaming live on Facebook. Welcome back to On the Record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Thank you so much for staying with us. This is our final segment tonight. We're discussing the rebounding economy. What now? As we seek to get a clearer picture of what our economy is truly looking like, we decided to get more of a holistic view and make it a little less Nassau-centric. Joining me tonight all the way from our beautiful family of islands are business owners in the hospitality and tourism industry. Help me to welcome all the way from Abaco, Manny Alexio from the Abaco Beach Resort, and Joe Dargavage. He is the partner at the Remora Bay Resort and Marina in Harbour Island. Gentlemen, welcome to On the Record.
Thank you for having us.
I want to talk about what business has been like for you in the past few months. We've seen the reopening of our borders. We've seen, in some instances, the return of tourists and the return of tourism. So what has it been like on your islands since we've seen this reopening of sorts?
Well, I'll go ahead and go first. So once again, it's Joe Dargavage from Harbour Island. Here in beautiful North Eleuthera. We've been very lucky. Remora Bay, similar to, as Manny will discuss with you about the Abacos and his property, we are a marina property. And so that really lended itself to an earlier opening. We both belong to what's called the Association of Bahamas Marinas, and we worked very closely with the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's opening committee to reinvigorate tourism through yachting in the early days, going all the way back to the fall in October, November, December. So when the hotel sectors finally got going in late November, early December, things really started to take off for both the yachting and marina sector as well as the hotel side. Here on Harbour Island, since December, it has been phenomenal. And we are looking at record-breaking numbers March, April, May, and June, not only for my property, but for most of the properties and the hotels along the beach in Harbor Island.
Manny, you've had, I guess, we'll call it sort of a double whammy. You all were hit with Hurricane Dorian almost 2 years ago, and now COVID. What's the recovery been like for you?
Well, the recovery has actually been pleasantly surprising. We were hoping that as the U.S. vaccinations take hold and people feel freer to travel, and with the opening up in November in our country's approach to allowing people in, that it would incrementally increase each month. Pleasantly surprised. I think it's at the end of the day, it's not going to be. It'll be a break-even year, perhaps. But I am very, very pleased that the comeback is there, and we're getting, at this point in time, about 70 to 75% of pre-hurricane numbers.
Well, that's pretty impressive. How hard has it been really to restart your businesses? You've both spoken about, the fact that people are coming. Was it really very difficult to get people back into the rooms, to get your business up and running again?
Well, here on Harbor Island, as the Abacos, you've got to look at a lot of factors, and that's what makes the out island tourism industry, especially both hotel and marina, so very important to the overall tourism economy. We touch so many sectors, from airline to home rentals, to house rentals, to provisioning. So all those things, all those logistical chains really had to come into play. We had to get the airlines back up and running, if you will. Silver Airways plays a very large role here in North Eleuthera, Aztec, water makers. So we had to make sure that those, though a lot of people wanted to get here and get here quickly, getting everything up and running at a quick fashion took a little bit of time, but it all worked out, and they all are working very close to their pre-COVID numbers, especially in air transport. And then on the island, you had many employees that had been out of work for a long time, but for the most part, everybody was willing and ready to come back to work, obviously, for lack of not being in work for so long. So yeah, it actually rebounded fairly quickly on Harbor Island in North Eleuthera.
Manny, what's your experience been like in Abaco?
Well, it's slightly different because I think because of the hurricane, there weren't housing available. Most people had been evacuated. So one of the problems we had earlier, and is becoming less and less of a problem, is even though we wanted to hire people back and we had to take some people into the hotel. And of course, as you're getting busier, you have to try help them find homes. So getting homes was a big issue. But I think slowly that's being resolved in workforce. So that was a bit of an issue, but still, we did very well. I think the people coming back were very happy to be back, and just they were a little more forgiving. I think especially the boating crowd, their expectations are somewhat different than somebody in the hotel side of it.
What would you say, and again, Abaco obviously presented a bit of a unique experience, but how has your success translated to the local economy? Have other people been benefiting as well from your numbers? Manny is having some internet issues. We know Abaco is still struggling a bit with some stuff. Joe, I'm going to sort of ask you to jump in. Have people in the local economy been benefiting from what you've been seeing at your hotel?
Absolutely. On both the yacht, private home rentals, and resort side, it is such a trickle-down economy, especially in the out islands. It affects fishing guides, charter fishing boats that are going out, golf cart rentals have been sold out here on Harbor Island for 2 months. The local if you go to most of the local grocery stores, they have done very, very well. Luckily, the logistics out of both Nassau and South Florida have been good to keep up with that heavy movement of crowd. So yeah, the trickle down effect all the way down to the people cleaning the pools and the local spas for spa treatments and such are all have been very busy and seeing a very good spring and now catapulting into the summer.
And what else is needed from a economic perspective as you look across the island, as you look across the local economies? What things would you say are needed? Hold on, Joe's back with us. Joe, Manny is back with us. Manny, I want to get you in on this. Can you tell us has the local economy in Abaco benefited from the numbers of people coming into your hotel and any other tourism spots on the island?
So, from the tourism perspective, absolutely. The people coming in, of course, need all the regular things: taxis, waiters, waitresses, and all the restaurants and all the auxiliary things. Banks are being more active. Abaco had, from that perspective, from the economy perspective, insurance dollars coming in and construction going on. I believe that there was a lot of work for people to do if they could find housing. Housing was the biggest problem. So there weren't as many unemployed people as one would think, and so the economy, I think, benefited from the income of U.S. dollars or non-Bahamian dollars coming into the country.
So what's needed now? I want to speak in the Abaco context. What's next? I mean, you've reopened, people have started coming in, and there are signs of, a recovery. But from where you sit, what's next? What's needed to get you to that next goalpost?
Well, there's still that message that we're open. I think there's still, surprisingly, I thought that message would be everybody would know about it by now, but there's still people asking the question, are we back in Abaco? There are parts of Abaco, especially if you're driving from the airport to the resort or to the islands, where that you still see a fair amount of destruction and construction work. Once they reach the resort or reach the playground of Abaco, the waterways and the islands, I think they forget all of that and they enjoy what they used to: better fishing, actually, cleaner water, everything else. So, well, what's needed for the future perhaps is a continuation of the feeling safe from the COVID and understanding people's behavior, because I think people's behavior has changed. Expectations have changed of what they want to do on a holiday. Being pent up in the US or around the world, they're more appreciative of being together with their family, perhaps taking a longer vacation, and understanding those dynamics, those changes that may have taken place, so you can appeal to that and speak to that language.
So probably different offerings or different packaging. Good point. Joe, do you see it as well in where you are? I mean, are the expectations different? Are people looking for different things?
Yeah, I 100% agree with Manny. The people that were coming back in the early months and even still today, they are just happy to be traveling. That's why I was saying, I know on Harbor Island and throughout all of Eleuthera, the private home rental sector is doing phenomenal as well, because people are content bringing extended family over or friends to visit for longer periods of time, and doing things that maybe they didn't do before. Doing more tours of Eleuthera, doing just spending alone time. Our restaurants have been very, very busy here on the island, but I don't hear many people complaining about it in terms of not being able to get a reservation or not being able to do a particular thing, or not being able to get a particular produce at the grocery store at a particular point in time. I think they realize that we are in a rebounding stage, and that there's gonna be some give and take. I do want to preface that that especially the Ministry of Tourism and particularly Minister de Aguilar did a phenomenal job when it came to the yachting and marina sector for helping us to get that reopened. And the reason I bring that up is I believe that catapulted the rest of tourism along the way, because once we were able to get the yachting sector open and get the marinas full and open, it really kind of caveated into the hotels as well.
Very interesting. Again, a lot of what we're seeing is hinging on, our reopening in terms of the vaccines and people getting vaccinated. Yet on the Family Islands, there is still a lot of vaccine hesitancy. Do you see that as impeding our progress in the future? Do you think that's going to hurt us? Manny, I'm going to start with you.
It can. I believe we're still in that being forgiven stage, and most of everybody that's working in the resort is being tested regularly and wearing their masks as much as possible. But I'm seeing a change, and it's I think management has to continually preach to the employees. And I think in our resort we've reached 50%, which is I think higher than the country as a whole. So I think we're doing well, but I think each owner and each hotel needs to do a lot more to persuade and get rid of the myths that exist out there.
Joe?
Once again, I agree with Manny. And not just in the individual hotel, but island-wide. We have done a really good rollout with our clinic here in terms of the vaccination. As a matter of fact, next week, we start our second round of vaccinations for not only those who didn't have the first shot, but for those who are now getting their second. So that's a good thing. But there is a lot of work and a lot of room to improve on the individual employees as well as the local sector of getting the vaccination. And we just have to stay on top of it and continue to push and continue to share the benefits that well outweigh any negatives that may be in people's minds about the vaccination.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your perspectives. It does help us to see what's happening on the islands. And, as I said at the beginning, we wanted to make this segment less Nassau-centric, which I think is so very important. So thank you very much for sharing with us. We certainly will be checking in with you in the future to see how things are going on the islands. And who knows, I may pop up somewhere soon at one of your resorts. I'm always looking to get out of Nassau. Well, thanks again. Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode of On the Record. I want to say thank you to all of my guests for taking the time to be with us, and of course to my technical and production crew for making it all possible, and of course to you, our audience, special thanks. You join us week after week. Thank you. So we could not have done it, and we cannot do it without you. We'll see you again next week, same place, same time, right here on The Record.